The mascara-stained tissues scattered across my vanity tell the story of the last hour. At 37, I'm staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at me. My trembling fingers trace the outline of my wedding ring. 12 years of memories, promises, and what I thought was an unbreakable commitment, all wrapped in a simple gold band that now feels like it's burning into my skin. "Sarah, are you coming to bed?" David's voice floats up from downstairs, casual and completely unaware that his world is about to shatter. Or maybe mine is. I honestly don't know anymore. I quickly swipe away a fresh tear. "Just finishing up!" My voice doesn't betray me. Years of keeping secrets have taught me that much at least. 2 hours later. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickers against my windshield, casting an accusatory red glow across my hands, gripping the steering wheel. It's 11:47 p.m., and my phone is lighting up for the 15th time in the past 20 minutes. David's calls, his texts, each one chips away at my resolve. "Where are you? Are you okay? Please answer me. Sarah, I'm worried." The latest message makes my heart stop. I know about Jake. My finger hovers over the phone screen, trembling. Inside room 124, the man who turned my world upside down is waiting. Behind me, 12 years of marriage hang in the balance. Ahead of me, a passion I never thought I'd feel burns so bright it terrifies me. They say you never know what you're capable of until you're tested. I used to judge women who cheated, who threw away their marriages for a moment of excitement. I never thought I'd be one of them. Until I met him. Until I met Jake. The next message from David appears like a death knell. "I'm coming to find you." They say hindsight is 20/20. Looking back now, I can pinpoint exactly when the cracks started appearing in my perfect suburban life, though I tried desperately not to see them at the time. From the outside, we were the couple everyone envied. Our colonial-style house in Greenwich, Connecticut, with its perfectly manicured lawn and white picket fence, could have been lifted straight from a magazine cover. David, my investment banker husband, had just made partner at Goldman Sachs. I had my interior design business, which I ran from our sun-filled home office. We hosted dinner parties where David would show off his wine knowledge, and I'd serve recipes I'd learned from my culinary tours in Europe. We were living the American dream. But dreams have a way of unraveling, don't they? It started with the late nights. David's "just one more hour" at the office turned into missed dinners, then missed weekends. The warmth of his side of the bed became a distant memory. Our conversations shortened to quick texts and hurried phone calls about schedules and social obligations. I found myself talking more to his voicemail than to him. Then came the wake-up call, literally. I fainted during one of our charity gala events. The doctor's words still ring in my ears. "Mrs. Anderson, your stress levels and blood pressure are concerning. You need to make some lifestyle changes." That's how I found myself at the Elite, Greenwich's most exclusive fitness center. I remember walking through those glass doors for the first time, feeling out of place among the Lululemon-clad wives with their perfect ponytails and practiced smiles. But I was determined. If David was too busy building his empire to notice me, I'd build myself instead. I didn't expect Jake. He wasn't like the other trainers with their protein shakes and rehearsed motivation speeches. At 28, he was younger than me, but there was a depth in his hazel eyes that spoke of old souls and untold stories. I first saw him demonstrating proper form to a client, his athletic frame moving with a grace that seemed almost artistic. Our eyes met in the mirror, and he smiled. Not the plastic smile I'd grown accustomed to in Greenwich, but something real, something that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. "You look lost," he said, approaching me after his session. His voice was warm, with a slight southern drawl that seemed out of place in Connecticut. "I'm Jake. First day?" I nodded, suddenly conscious of my department store workout clothes and messy bun. "Sarah," I managed to reply. "That obvious, huh?" He laughed, and something in my chest tightened. "Everyone's got to start somewhere. How about a free assessment? I've got time now if you do." I should have said no. Should have made an excuse about dinner with David or calls to make. But David was in London for the week, and my calls had all gone to voicemail lately anyway. Sure, I heard myself say. Why not? Why not indeed? Two simple words that would change everything. As Jake led me toward the assessment room, I caught our reflection in the wall of mirrors. Him, confident and capable. Me nervous, but somehow more alive than I'd felt in months. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that simple walk across the gym floor, was the first step on a path that would either save me or destroy everything I'd built. And the scariest part? Deep down, a part of me was already wondering if it might be worth it. It's funny how affairs don't begin with grand gestures or dramatic declarations. They start small, in the quiet moments, in the spaces between breaths, in innocent conversations over protein smoothies at the gym's juice bar. You're pushing yourself too hard, Jake said one day after my workout, sliding a berry smoothie across the counter. It had become our post-session ritual, though I never let myself call it a routine. Routines felt too much like commitments. Your form is getting sloppy when you're tired. I don't want you getting hurt. The genuine concern in his voice made something flutter in my chest. When was the last time David had noticed anything about me? This morning, he'd walked right past the new highlights in my hair. Highlights I'd gotten specifically because he once mentioned liking them. I just want to see results, I admitted, taking a sip of the smoothie. Make it all worth it, you know? Jake leaned forward, those hazel eyes intense. Sarah, you don't see yourself clearly, do you? You're already transforming. It's not just physical. There's this light in you now. My cheeks flushed, and I quickly changed the subject to his life instead. Jake told me about growing up in Georgia, about his dreams of opening his own fitness center focused on holistic wellness. He didn't just talk. He listened. Really listened. When I mentioned my passion for interior design, he asked questions that showed genuine interest, not just polite obligation. Weeks passed, and my body began to change. The mirror showed definition in my arms I'd never had before, curves that had been hidden under years of stress and neglect. But it was more than that. I started holding my head higher, walking with more confidence. I caught men looking at me differently, and part of me, a part I tried to silence, wondered if Jake noticed too. Then came that Tuesday evening session. The gym was nearly empty, the setting sun casting long shadows through the windows. Jake was teaching me a new deadlift technique. Your hips need to hinge more, he said, and suddenly his hand was on my waist, guiding the movement. Time seemed to stop. His touch burned through my workout clothes, and for a moment, just a moment, I let myself lean back slightly into his chest. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. I jumped forward, nearly dropping the weights. I think I've got it, I said quickly, my voice higher than normal. That night, I lay awake beside David's sleeping form, my skin still tingling where Jake had touched me. The guilt came in waves, each one threatening to drown me. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a training correction, nothing more. But in my dreams, those hands didn't let go. The sleepless nights became more frequent. I'd find myself in the kitchen at 3 a.m., clutching a cup of chamomile tea, trying to wash away the taste of what-ifs. What if I'd turned my head during that moment in the gym? What if I let myself feel what I was desperately trying not to feel? My wedding ring caught the moonlight, and I thought about the vows I'd made. Till death do us part. But wasn't this a kind of death? The slow, quiet death of a marriage where one person works 60-hour weeks and the other person dreams of their gym trainer's hands. The next morning, I got a text from Jake. Missed you at the gym today. Everything okay? I stared at those words for 20 minutes before responding. Because the truth was, nothing was okay. I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, and the scariest part wasn't that I might fall. The scariest part was that I wanted to. I spent 3 hours getting ready for the Goldman Sachs corporate gala. The red dress I chose was different from my usual conservative style. Fitted silk that hugged my new curves, with a neckline that dipped just low enough to make a statement. My newly toned shoulders were bare, And for the first time in years, I felt beautiful, dangerous, alive. I wanted David to notice. No, I needed him to notice. It was our wedding anniversary, 12 years to the day. I hadn't mentioned it that morning, hoping he'd remember on his own. Hoping that for once, just once, I wouldn't have to be the one keeping track of our life's important moments. The ballroom of the Four Seasons was a sea of dark suits and designer dresses. David immediately disappeared into a cluster of senior partners, leaving me clutching a champagne flute like a life raft. I watched him work the room, remembering how he used to work just as hard to make me laugh, to make me feel special. "Sarah," a colleague's wife approached. "You look amazing. Have you lost weight?" Before I could answer, David appeared at my side. "Honey, come meet the new head of Asian markets." He guided me away, his hand on my lower back, a gesture that once would have sent shivers down my spine. Now it felt like muscle memory, nothing more. "By the way," he whispered as we walked, "I have to fly to Tokyo tomorrow morning. Emergency client situation. I'll be gone about a week." My champagne glass nearly slipped from my fingers. "Tomorrow? But we had plans for—" I know. The Carter's dinner party. You can still go without me, right? Or reschedule." He didn't know. He had completely forgotten what tomorrow was. I excused myself to the ladies' room, fighting back tears that would ruin my carefully applied makeup. As I sat in a plush chair in the powder room, my phone buzzed. "Jake, you ever have those nights where the world feels too small and too big all at once?" My heart jumped. We'd never texted outside of scheduling sessions before. I should have ignored it, should have deleted it. Instead, I replied, "All the time. Especially tonight." The response was immediate. "Want to talk about it?" That was the moment. The real moment everything changed. Not in the gym with his hands on my waist, not during our smoothie conversations. Here, in a luxury hotel bathroom, on my wedding anniversary, with my husband 60 feet and a million miles away. "Not here, not now," I typed back. "Later then. When you're home." I stared at those words until the screen went dark. When I returned to the ballroom, David was deep in conversation about market projections. He didn't notice I'd been gone for 20 minutes. Didn't notice the slight tremor in my hands. Didn't notice me at all. At midnight, I lay in bed alone. David sighed cold and empty as he worked late to prepare for his Tokyo trip. My phone glowed in the darkness. "Jake, still awake?" "Yes." "Tell me what's wrong, Sarah." And I did. The words poured out of me in a flood of text messages. The loneliness, the invisibility, the way I felt like a trophy his career had earned rather than a partner, a lover, a friend. With each message, each confession, each shared secret, I felt the walls I'd built around my heart beginning to crumble. Dawn was breaking when we finally said goodnight. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with a bittersweet thrill. I had just shared more intimacy through text messages with Jake than I had in months of marriages with David. My last thought before sleep took me was a question that would haunt me in the days to come. If emotional infidelity feels this right, how wrong could the rest of it be? I should have canceled the session when I saw the storm warnings. Should have rescheduled when Jake mentioned the gym would be closing early. Should have, could have, would have. The story of how every affair begins, I suppose. It was 8:45 p.m., and the elite was nearly empty. Most trainers had gone home, but Jake had agreed to a late session since I'd missed the whole week while David was home from Tokyo. The gym's usual bright lights were dimmed to their night setting, creating pools of shadow between the equipment. "Your form has gotten sloppy," Jake teased, standing behind me as I completed my final set of rows. "What happened to my star pupil?" "Maybe I need more attention," I shot back, immediately regretting the flirtation in my voice. These dangerous little moments had been happening more frequently since that night of text messages. A lingering look here, a loaded comment there. We were dancing on the edge of something, both pretending we didn't know what it was. Thunder cracked outside, making me jump. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, transforming the city lights into watery blurs. "That looks nasty," Jake said, checking his phone. "They've issued a flash flood warning. Roads are already getting bad." He hesitated, then added, "We should probably wait it out." I've got coffee in my office. I knew I should leave. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to grab my things and run. Instead, I heard myself say, "Coffee sounds perfect." Jake's office was small but comfortable, with a leather couch and motivational posters on the walls. A desk lamp cast warm light across the space, making it feel intimate, removed from the world outside. I sat on one end of the couch while he made coffee using a small machine on his desk. "David's away again?" he asked, handing me a steaming mug. "Milan this time." I took a sip, noting how he didn't sit at his desk, but chose the other end of the couch. Close, but not too close. Some big merger. It must be lonely. The simple observation, spoken so softly, broke something in me. "You have no idea," I whispered. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and suddenly the office plunged into darkness. In the strange, charged silence that followed, I could hear Jake's breathing, could feel the shift in the couch as he moved slightly closer. "Sarah." My name on his lips was both a warning and an invitation. "We shouldn't," I said, but I didn't move away. "I know." His hand found mine in the darkness, fingers intertwining. "Tell me to stop." I didn't. Instead, I turned toward him, heart thundering louder than the storm outside. His free hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with a tenderness that made my eyes sting with tears. The kiss, when it came, was both inevitable and earth-shattering. Soft at first, tentative, then deepening with months of pent-up longing. His lips tasted of coffee and possibilities, of everything I'd been denying myself. For one glorious moment, the world disappeared. No guilt, no consequences, just the electric feeling of his mouth on mine and his hands in my hair. Reality crashed back when another thunderclap shook the windows. I jerked away, hand flying to my mouth. "Oh God," I breathed. "Oh God, what did I do?" The emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a harsh fluorescent glow. Jake looked wrecked, his hair mussed where I'd run my fingers through it, his eyes dark with desire, and something that might have been regret. "Sarah, Don't." I stood up so quickly I almost knocked over my coffee. This was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But even as I grabbed my bag with trembling hands, even as I ran through the rain to my car, even as I sat in my driveway sobbing, I knew I was lying to myself. The real mistake wasn't the kiss. The real mistake was wanting to go back and do it again. That night, I lay awake, my lips still tingling, alternating between waves of desire and disgust. I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, broken a vow I couldn't unmake. The wedding ring on my finger felt like it was burning into my skin, but when I went to take it off, I couldn't bring myself to do it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Jake, I can't stop thinking about you." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back 3 words that would change everything. "Me neither." "Come over. They say guilt makes you paranoid." After 6 weeks of stolen moments with Jake, every shadow held a threat. Every unexpected text made my heart race. But nothing prepared me for what happened that Tuesday morning at the gym. I was wiping down the treadmill after my session when I heard a female voice that made Jake freeze mid-sentence. "Well, if it isn't my favorite ex-trainer." She was stunning, tall, willowy, with the kind of ethereal beauty that makes other women instantly hate themselves. Jake's face had gone pale. "Melissa," he managed, "you're back in Greenwich? Daddy's expanding the real estate business here." Her eyes flickered to me, assessing, calculating. "Aren't you going to introduce us, Jake?" The way she said his name, intimate, familiar, made my stomach clench. Jake cleared his throat. "Sarah, this is Melissa, my ex. Melissa, Sarah's one of my clients. Just one of my clients." The words stung more than they should have. That night, I got a text from Jake. "We need to talk about Melissa. She's not just my ex. There's more to the story." But before I could respond, something even more unexpected happened. David came home early, carrying roses and a small blue Tiffany box. "I've been a terrible husband," he said, taking my hands in his. "I miss you, Sarah. Let me make it up to you." The diamond bracelet he clasped around my wrist felt like handcuffs. Over the next week, David was everywhere, bringing me coffee in bed, scheduling dinner dates, leaving sweet notes in my purse. The husband I'd been missing for years had suddenly returned, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Every loving gesture was a knife of guilt in my chest. Then came the close call. I was meeting Jake at a small cafe in Stamford, far enough from Greenwich to be safe, or so we thought. We had rules. No touching in public, no lingering looks, nothing that could give us away. But rules get fuzzy when you're in love. Yes, love. I'd finally admitted that to myself, though I hadn't said it to Jake yet. "Sarah, is that you?" My blood turned to ice. Rachel, my best friend since college, was standing by our table, her expression shifting from surprise to confusion as she took in the scene, the intimate way Jake and I were leaning toward each other, the guilt written all over our faces. "Rachel, This is Jake, my trainer. We were just discussing my fitness plan." "At a cafe 20 miles from Greenwich?" Her eyes narrowed. "On the same day you told me you had a client meeting in New Haven?" I fumbled through an explanation, while Jake excused himself to take a phone call. Rachel didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. The question was, what would she do with her suspicions? But the real terror came 3 days later. I opened my gym locker after a session with Jake to find a note, typed on plain white paper. "Does David know where you really were last Thursday? Does he know about room 124 at the Starlight Motel?" Tick-tock, Sarah. My hands shook so badly I could barely text Jake. When I showed him the note in his office, his face darkened. "Melissa," he said grimly. "This has to be her. Sarah, there's something you need to know about why we broke up." But before he could continue, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email. The pictures attached might interest your husband." Suddenly, Jake's revelation about Melissa didn't seem so important anymore. I opened my email with trembling fingers, and what I saw made my world stop spinning. Someone had been watching us. Someone had been taking pictures. And now, someone was ready to destroy everything. The Berkshires retreat seemed perfect. A boutique hotel nestled in the mountains, far from prying eyes and threatening notes. With David away at a conference in Singapore, Jake and I had planned a weekend that felt almost like a normal couple's getaway. Almost. I should have known better. In affairs, there's no such thing as perfect. The first sign something was wrong was Jake's insistence on keeping his laptop close. "Just some workout plans I need to review," he said when I questioned him. But I'd caught him closing it quickly when I approached, his face tense with something that looked like guilt. That night, while he was in the shower, I did something I'm not proud of. I opened his laptop. The password was easy to guess. His birthday, which he'd once mentioned during our smoothie talks. What I found made my blood run cold. Emails. Dozens of them. Between Jake and Melissa. Everything's going according to plan. "Sarah doesn't suspect a thing. Remember what David Anderson did to your family. This is our chance. The photos are ready. Once we have proof of the affair, he'll have no choice but to settle." My hands trembled as I scrolled through months of correspondence. Jake's family's financial ruin, his father's suicide. It hadn't been just bad investments as he'd claimed. David's firm had been involved somehow. And I was just a pawn in their revenge plot. The shower stopped running. I quickly closed the laptop, my mind racing. Before I could decide what to do, my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. "Sarah." His voice was strange, tight. "Where are you right now?" "I'm at the spa retreat. Remember? The one I told you about?" "Stop lying." The words came like slaps. "I know everything. Melissa sent me the pictures. But that's not even the worst part." My heart stopped. David. I've been investigating Jake Matthews for months. Did you know he's been targeting the wives of other Goldman partners too? That he and Melissa have been running this scheme across 3 states? The room started spinning. I gripped the desk for support. But here's what he doesn't know, David continued, his voice turning coldly professional. We've been building a case against him. The FBI is involved, and right now, they're on their way to your hotel. As if on cue, I heard sirens in the distance. The bathroom door opened. Jake stood there, still damp from the shower, his face changing as he saw my expression. You know, he said. It wasn't a question. Was any of it real? My voice broke. Any of it at all? He moved toward me, hands raised. Sarah, listen. Don't come near me. I backed away, phone still pressed to my ear. David, Just stay where you are, David said. It's over. The sirens were getting closer. Jake's face had turned hard, calculating. A stranger's face. How had I never seen it before? It wasn't supposed to go this far, he said. You weren't supposed to be. He reached for his jacket, but I was already running. Down the hotel corridor, barefoot, heart pounding. Behind me, I heard Jake's footsteps, then shouts, then the heavy sound of multiple pairs of feet. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. I made it to my car just as the FBI vehicles pulled into the parking lot. As they surrounded Jake, I saw Melissa being led out of a black SUV in handcuffs. And there, standing by one of the FBI cars, was David. Our eyes met across the chaos. In that moment, I saw everything. His pain, his anger, but also something else. Relief. He'd known about Jake's scheme for months, but had waited, building a case, protecting other women from falling into the same trap. He'd known about my affair, and instead of exposing me, he'd worked silently to save me from something far worse than I'd imagined. I realized then that I'd been wrong about so many things. About Jake's love, about David's distance, about what it means to truly care for someone. As the agents led Jake away, he caught my eye one last time. I did fall for you, he said. That wasn't part of the plan. But I'd had enough of his lies. Enough of all the lies, including my own. I turned to my husband, the weight of everything crushing my chest. David. He held up a hand. Not here, not now. His voice was tired, heavy with something between grief and resignation. We have statements to make. After that, we'll talk about what's left of us to save. Room 124 at the Starlight Motel had become my personal ground zero. I sat in my car, staring at the door, remembering how it all started. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't here to meet Jake. I was here to end it. What I didn't expect was for both David and Melissa to pull into the parking lot within minutes of each other. You need to hear this, Melissa said, her usual polished demeanor cracking. All of it, before it's too late. The truth spilled out in the harsh glow of the motel's neon sign, each revelation more devastating than the last. Your husband didn't just handle Jake's family's investments, Melissa explained, her voice shaking. He tried to save them. When Jake's father was embezzling from their family company, David discovered it during due diligence. He gave them a chance to make it right, to avoid prosecution. But Jake's father chose suicide instead. David stepped forward, his face haunted. I've spent the last year trying to track down every penny of their family's money, trying to make it right. Those late nights, those business trips. I was rebuilding their trust fund, Sarah, for Jake's mother, for his sisters. But Jake never knew, Melissa continued. He built this whole revenge fantasy, blamed David for everything. The anonymous notes in your locker? That was me trying to warn you. I couldn't watch him destroy another woman's life. Another woman, my voice cracked. That's when Melissa pulled out her phone, showing me Jake's hidden photo album. Pictures of other women, other wives, a pattern spanning years. Each affair meticulously documented, each woman carefully chosen for maximum impact on their husbands' careers. I found this on his phone last week, she said. That's when I knew I had to stop him. But the worst was yet to come. Back home, I sat on my bathroom floor, staring at two items that would determine my future: divorce papers David had left on my desk, and a pregnancy test showing two pink lines. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone to text David the news. But before I could, a message from an unknown number lit up my screen. I know what really happened that night, and it's not what you think. What would you do if you were in my shoes? The truth about that mysterious text will shock you even more than anything you've read so far. Drop your thought in the comments if you think I should leave them both. Have you ever had to choose between love and revenge? The second part will be coming soon. Subscribe to find out. Whose baby is it really? What happened the night of Jake's father's death? Why did Melissa wait so long to reveal the truth? And most importantly, can a marriage survive the ultimate betrayal? Sometimes the biggest lies are the ones we tell ourselves. But the truth can be even more devastating than the lie.